local television in Nevada. It was a perfect case study in what happens if you don't ever talk to people with whom you disagree. Because here's the thing, when your positions are never questioned, you're never forced to develop strong logic to back them up. When your arguments are never challenged, you don't ever have to improve them. You don't ever have to cast out arguments of yours that don't make sense or learn how to deal with evidence that appears to contradict your conclusions. That's why I regret that we don't have more conservatives on this show. Because I do have a point of view, of course, but I like talking with people with whom I disagree, both because it is fun and selfishly because it makes my arguments better. On the right, the downside for conservatives of there being a huge prefab conservative media infrastructure is that conservatives grown inside that bubble sometimes cannot survive outside it. Do you want to see what that looks like?
You have an interesting view, actually, about jobless benefits. And I want to show people what you had to say in what is now a celebrated interview about jobless benefits. Listen to this.
You can make more money on unemployment than you can going down and getting one of those jobs that is an honest job, but it doesn't pay as much. And so that's what's happened to us, is that we have put in so much entitlement into our government that we really have spoiled our citizenry and said, you don't want the jobs that are available.
So you're saying that these tens of thousands of Nevadans, they're sitting on their couches, they're all spoiled, they don't want to go out and get a job, and I'm going to cut off your benefits. That's your attitude toward these.
No, now, come on, John.
But you said they're spoiled.
Well, I said that it had spoiled our citizenry. That's a little different.
It's almost like it hadn't occurred to Sharon Engle until that moment that trashing the unemployed in the middle of the biggest economic crisis since the Great Depression maybe isn't the best political strategy among a number of other problems with it. But that would explain why the best she could do rebuttal-wise was, when I said we're spoiling the unemployed, I didn't mean the unemployed are spoiled. Don't take me out of context. But if you thought that didn't make any sense, get a load of Sharon Engle's take on the separation of church and state.
What about separation of church and state? You know, that is in the Constitution. The Founding Fathers believed in that. And you know what? Back in 1995, when you were on the Nye County School Board, you came to the legislature testifying a school choice bill. And here is what the minutes say. You said, the bill is exclusionary of many private religious schools, and Ms. Engle believed that to be an un-American concept, and the tenet of the separation of church and state is an unconstitutional doctrine. The separation of church and state arises out of the Constitution.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, the Founding Fathers didn't believe in the separation of church and state?
Actually,
the Establishment Clause, the First Amendment?
Actually, Thomas Jefferson has been misquoted, like I've been misquoted out of context.
Wow, Sharon Engle is not wrong about the separation of church and state, okay? It's just that she and Thomas Jefferson and the First Amendment to the Constitution keep getting taken out of context. Congress shall make no law. Never mind. Another awkward thing about the friendly, no-arguing bubble is that hypocrisy and inconsistency don't exist there, because no one ever calls you out for engaging in hypocrisy and inconsistency. So when you finally emerge from the bubble, you may find yourself incapable of recognizing hypocrisy or inconsistency even in your own arguments, even when someone really slowly and carefully points them out to you.
Another thing that's getting a lot of play, and you talked about bringing your values, and you don't think there's anything wrong with that. And that came up during a conversation this year with Bill Manders, who is a conservative radio talk show host. Let's listen to that.
Well, I'm pro-responsible choice.
Right.
You know, there's choice to abstain, choice to do contraception.
Is there any reason at all? Is there any reason at all for an abortion?
Not in my book.
So in other words, rape and incest would not be something?
You know, I'm a Christian.
Right.
And I believe that God has a plan and a purpose for each one of our lives, and that He can intercede in all kinds of situations, and we need to have a little faith in many things.
In many ways, that's the purest of the pro-life positions. You should not have any exceptions. On the other hand, I don't understand the philosophy, and you can explain this to me. You don't want government to be in Social Security or Medicare, the Department of Education. You don't want to regulate big oil companies. You don't want to regulate a lot of industry, and yet you want government to go and tell a 13-year-old child who's been raped by her father that she has to have that baby. You want government to do that.
I didn't say that.
But that's your position.
That I was going to, no, I always say say that I value life. My position has always been that government should stay out of this matter, but in 1973 they chose to get involved in this. And since
you said this
then,
in 2010, though.
I know,
What
but
you
in
said is
1973 with
that's
Roe
Roe versus
v.
Wade,
That's right. And since then, there have been a lot of things that we have seen happen that have not been pro-life. And I've always been pro-life, but what I'm saying to you is the government decided to get involved in this, not me.
Government got involved with Roe v. Wade was government involvement, and that was bad. But what you want is for the government to monitor every pregnancy in the country to ensure that it ends the way the government approves of. You want every pregnant woman or child in America to have her pregnancy monitored by the government to make sure that there is a live birth as the conclusion of every impregnation. That's government involvement in reproductive decision making. And it's never been put to Sharon Engle that way before, apparently. And so she is visibly confused. Ultimately, there were a lot of headlines out of this first mainstream media interview of the 2010 general election season with the season's single most interesting candidate. Even as Sharon Engle said she didn't really think Harry Reid should be killed, he should just be voted out of office. She stood by her claim that if conservatives don't get the electoral outcomes they want in the midterm election, we should expect conservatives to take up weapons to get their way. She is still not walking that back. But the bigger story here, and the more unexpected story here, is how curdled and pitiful and inbred policy and even argument itself gets when it is never exposed to opposing views. How weak the political and rhetorical muscles get when they are allowed to atrophy. So I lament the no-argue bubbles. I lament the reluctance of conservatives and Republican politicians in particular to come on this show, in part because arguing is fun and talking to people with whom you disagree is fun, but also because it makes us all better at what we do, and that's good for us. And if you are a politician, that is good for the country.